The morning I brought my newborn daughter home from the hospital was supposed to be the happiest day of my life. Instead, it became the day my own mother tried to erase me. I stood on the front porch, exhausted from 23 hours of labor, my tiny daughter Lily sleeping peacefully against my chest. My body ached with every step, but seeing our family home made me smile. "Home at last," I whispered, kissing Lily's forehead. The smile disappeared the second I noticed my suitcase sitting outside the front door. At first, I thought someone had made a mistake. Then the front door opened. My mother, Diane, walked out with her arms folded across her chest. Her expression was cold, colder than I'd ever seen before. "You need to leave," she said. I blinked, certain I had misunderstood. "What?" I said, "Leave. You're not living here anymore." I looked down at my sleeping baby, then back at my mother. "Mom, I just got out of the hospital." "I know. I have nowhere else to go. That's not my problem." For a moment, I couldn't breathe. The woman who had held my hand during labor just 2 days earlier was now telling me to leave with a 3-day-old baby. "Please," my voice cracked. "At least let Lily come inside. She's a newborn." My mother's face didn't soften. "If you don't leave, I'll call the police." Behind her, my younger brother, Ethan, leaned casually against the hallway wall with a smug grin on his face. "So this is finally happening," he muttered. "What are you talking about?" I asked. He laughed. "You really thought this house was yours?" My heart skipped a beat. "What does that mean?" Neither of them answered. Instead, my mother tossed another bag onto the porch. It landed beside my feet. "Everything you own is out here." Tears burned my eyes, but I refused to let them fall. Not while they were watching. Not while Lily was sleeping peacefully in my arms, completely unaware that the world around her had just fallen apart. I picked up my bags with trembling hands. As I turned toward the sidewalk, my mother spoke one last time. "And don't come back." The door slammed shut. I stood there for several seconds, staring at the house where I'd grown up. The same house my late grandfather had spent 30 years building with his own hands. The same house he'd once looked me in the eyes and said would always be my safe place. I didn't know it yet, but my mother had just made the biggest mistake of her life. Because hidden inside an old file cabinet, locked away in a lawyer's office across town, was one document she had completely forgotten about. One document that would change everything. I spent that first night in the parking lot of a 24-hour grocery store. My daughter Lily slept peacefully in her car seat, completely unaware that we no longer had a home. I, on the other hand, didn't sleep at all. Every time I closed my eyes, I heard my mother's voice. That's not my problem. How had everything changed so quickly? Just 3 months earlier, my mother had insisted I move back into the family house after my husband. Daniel was killed in a construction accident. She hugged me every night, promised she would help me through my pregnancy, and swore Lily would grow up surrounded by family. Now she had thrown us out without a second thought. Nothing made sense. The next morning, while feeding Lily in my car, my phone rang. The screen displayed a name I hadn't seen in nearly 2 years. Mr. Harrison. My grandfather's attorney. My heart skipped a beat. I answered immediately. "Emily?" the elderly voice asked gently. "Yes. I've been trying to reach you for weeks." I frowned. "I changed my number after Daniel passed away." "I understand," he replied. "There's something very important we need to discuss. Can you come to my office today?" His serious tone sent a chill through my body. "Is something wrong?" There was a brief silence. "I'd rather explain it in person." 2 hours later, I walked into his office with Lily asleep in a stroller. The walls were covered with framed certificates and old family photographs. Mr. Harrison smiled warmly as he looked at my daughter. "She has your grandfather's eyes," he said softly. Hearing those words almost brought me to tears. Grandpa had always believed in me, unlike everyone else. He opened a thick brown file and slowly slid a sealed envelope across the desk. "I was instructed to give this to you only if there was ever a dispute involving the family home." I stared at the envelope. Written across the front in my grandfather's familiar handwriting were 6 words. "For Emily, when she needs it most." My hands trembled as I carefully opened it. Inside was a signed letter. As I read the first few lines, my eyes widened. Then I looked back at Mr. Harrison in complete disbelief. "Are you saying—" He nodded. "Yes. Your grandfather transferred legal ownership of the house several years before he passed away." I couldn't speak. "But my mother said the house belongs to her." Mr. Harrison leaned forward. "I'm afraid you're Mother has been counting on the fact that you never knew the truth. For the first time since being thrown out, the pain inside me was replaced by something stronger. Determination. If my grandfather had trusted me with that home, then I wasn't about to let anyone steal the future he had planned for Lily and me. 3 days later, I stood across the street from the house where I had grown up. Lily slept peacefully in her stroller while I stared at the front door. This time I wasn't there to beg. I was there with the truth. Beside me stood Mr. Harrison and a licensed process server carrying a thick envelope of legal documents. "Are you ready?" Mr. Harrison asked. I took a deep breath and nodded. As ready as I'll ever be. The process server knocked firmly. A few seconds later, the door swung open. My mother smiled the moment she saw me, but it wasn't kindness. It was arrogance. "I thought I told you never to come back." Before I could answer, the process server stepped forward. "Mrs. Diane Carter?" "Yes?" "You've been officially served." Her smile disappeared. "What is this?" He handed her the envelope. As she skimmed the first page, the color drained from her face. This isn't possible." Behind her, Ethan walked into the hallway. "Mom, what's going on?" She didn't answer. Her hands were shaking. I looked directly into her eyes. "You told me this house wasn't mine." "It isn't," she shouted. Mr. Harrison calmly removed another document from his briefcase. "Actually," he said, "according to the recorded deed signed by the late William Carter, legal ownership of this property was transferred to Emily Carter 4 years ago." Ethan laughed nervously. "That's fake." Mr. Harrison handed him a certified copy. "It's recorded with the county. You can verify it yourself." Ethan's confident expression vanished as he read the document. My mother suddenly pointed at me. "Your grandfather promised this house to me." "No," I replied quietly. "He promised you a place to live. He gave the ownership to me." For a long moment, no one spoke. Then my mother tried a different approach. "Emily, sweetheart, this is all just a misunderstanding." I almost smiled. 3 days earlier, I had been a burden. Now I was sweetheart. "You threw your own daughter and newborn granddaughter onto the street," I said. That wasn't a misunderstanding. Neighbors had begun stepping outside after hearing the raised voices. Curtains moved. Front doors opened. People watched silently as the truth unfolded. Mr. Harrison spoke again. "You have 14 days to vacate the property, unless another legal agreement is reached." My mother's face turned pale. "You can't do this to me." I looked down at Lily sleeping peacefully in her stroller. Then I looked back at the woman who had abandoned us. "No," I said softly. "I didn't do this. You did." And for the first time since, I had carried my newborn away from that house in tears. I saw fear in my mother's eyes instead of mine. 14 days passed faster than I expected. On the morning of the deadline, I parked across the street with Lily asleep in her car seat. A moving truck stood in front of the house, and my mother and Ethan silently carried boxes to the curb. Neither of them looked angry anymore. They looked defeated. When the last box was loaded, my mother slowly walked toward me. For the first time in years, she had no excuses, no commands, no control, only regret. "Emily," she whispered, tears filling her eyes. "I made a terrible mistake." I held Lily a little closer. "You didn't make one mistake," I answered calmly. "You made a choice." She lowered her head. "I thought the house should stay with Ethan. I convinced myself your grandfather would have wanted that. But he didn't," I replied. She nodded. "I know that now." There was a long silence between us. Then she looked at her granddaughter sleeping peacefully in my arms. "I'll never forgive myself for what I did to both of you." I didn't answer. Some wounds are simply too deep for words. Mr. Harrison handed me the new set of keys. "They're yours," he said with a warm smile. As I unlocked the front door, memories rushed back. My grandfather teaching me how to paint the fence, baking cookies together every Christmas, his voice echoing through the hallway. "A home isn't built with wood, Emily. It's built with love. Protect it, and it'll protect you." Tears filled my eyes. This house had never been about money. It had always been about family. The kind of family my grandfather dreamed of, not the one my mother had nearly destroyed. Over the next several weeks, I transformed every room. The nursery became bright and peaceful. The old garden bloomed again with fresh flowers. I framed my grandfather's favorite photograph and placed it above the fireplace, where everyone could see it. Every morning, I carried Lily onto the front porch and whispered, "This is your home. No one will ever take it away from you." Months later, I received a handwritten letter from my mother. She apologized without asking for anything in return. No money, no second chance, just an apology. I folded the letter carefully and placed it in a drawer. Forgiveness wasn't something that happened overnight. It had to be earned. As the sun set that evening, I rocked Lily to sleep in the same chair where my grandfather used to read his books. A gentle breeze drifted through the open window, and for the first time in a long while, the house felt peaceful again. I smiled as I looked around. My mother believed she had forced me out of my future. Instead, she had unknowingly led me back to exactly where I belonged, because the greatest inheritance my grandfather left me wasn't a house. It was the courage to protect the people I loved and the strength to never surrender. What was rightfully ours?